Good morning, everyone. So, this is Swati Shastri taking a session on computer networks and security. This is our fourth lecture. So, before starting today's lecture, let us have a brief recap of what we did in the previous class. So in the previous class, we have started learning about web and HTTP. When you considered web, so web was one thing wherein you have lots of objects and an HTML file. HTML file is also considered as an object itself. So using those objects are actually sent from server to the client. So to send that from server to client, or for a client to request that particular object from the server, you have a protocol that is running, and that protocol is called as HTTP protocol, correct? So when you are considering this HTTP protocol, we have seen certain basics of the HTTP protocol, that is how does it run and what are the components it requires. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. We have also seen that this protocol can make use of two kinds of connections, that is called as non-persistent connections and persistent connections. So non-persistent connections in the sense, if you have multiple objects to send from the server to the client, if you are using a non-persistent connection, then it means that that particular server is going to close the connection after sending each object, and client has to open connection for every object. Rather, that is not the same case for your persistent connections. When you consider persistent connections, all the objects that are being asked from the server to reach towards the client, the server will never close the connection until and unless client will not request it to close. So persistent connections are comparatively better connections for certain reasons. So to perform this, to send the object from one place to another, to request that object and all, we make use of something called as HTTP messages that we have learned. We have two kinds of messages, that is HTTP request as well as HTTP response. So if client needs or requires some of the some of the objects, that time it sends an HTTP request. Whenever server is going to serve client with that particular object, it will be sending the HTTP response. So with these two things, let us learn or study today's topic, and that today's topic is that to do the same things, what all pre-existing or existing contents are there. So you have something called as cookies, you have something called as web caching, you also have something called as conditional get. So these are an extension to the previous class that we have already studied. So it is going to satisfy a course outcome of application layer protocols, and it is having a Bloom's taxonomy as a level 2. So let us start with today's topic. The first part is cookies. What is cookie? What are we going to do with the cookies? So when you consider cookies, if someone, like, cookie is a very common word that has been used in computer science, correct? So computer science people are very much familiar with this word called as cookie. So when you consider any cookie, what is the first definition of that particular cookie? What is the meaning of cookie? So cookie is a mechanism that allows the server to store its information, that is server's information about user on the user's computer, that is user's own computer. For example, if I'm using a machine, I'm a client and I'm accessing, consider that I'm trying to access Amazon server. Amazon uses my machine, that is a client machine, to store information about me in my machine itself. That particular file which saves my information in my own file, but that is being directed by the Amazon server. That particular file we call it as cookie. Okay, so to do or use this cookie, we have four major components that we have to make use of. First component that we have to make use is a cookie header line in HTTP response message. So you're sending a request, you being a client, you send a request to the server is going to respond you back. In that response message, you will add a cookie header line. I suppose you remember in the previous class we have learnt about header lines. You will be having status line. After that you have header lines like about connection, about the acceptance language. All those things are header lines, right? So in the response message, it creates a header line and it sends back. So this is our first component out of four. Second component that we have is we have a header line related to cookie in the request message. So when the response message reaches your client and client sends the next request, that particular request will be having this particular header line in that. Next, third component that cookie will always have is that a cookie file kept on the user's host managed by the user's browser. So if I have opened Google Chrome and I have opened Amazon, Amazon keeps a cookie file in my machine, correct? So this cookie file is present in user's machine, that is host is nothing but a machine. So it is kept on user's machine, but this is managed by the browser that we are using. So if I'm using Google Chrome, it will be managed by Google Chrome. If I'm using Mozilla Firefox, it will be managed by Mozilla Firefox. So this is the third component that it requires to execute. Next, the fourth component that it requires to execute is a backend database at that particular website. When you have an Amazon server creating a cookie file, that Amazon server should have a database who is going to manage this particular the particular number that it will be sending me, this particular cookie. It's saying that I was being using this particular part, something of that sort. So you might have seen that whenever you have visited Amazon or any shopping sites. I mean, cookies are the things which are most used on shopping sites rather than any other parts. So when you use shopping sites and all, if you have searched for some XYZ product today and you leave for some about a week and visit later, it will prompt you to use that particular product. You, until and unless you do not buy that product, the Amazon server will be forcing you to buy. You may get emails regarding that, regarding your search, correct? So that is all because of your cookie. So somewhere it is good thing, somewhere it is bad thing. It is relative, that's all. So let us understand how this cookie works, how these four components are being used using a process. So let us take up an example saying that there is a lady called as Suzanne who is interested in accessing internet always from her PC, and she is not a user of some a cyber center or something. She's using her own PC. She's often visiting a e-commerce site and she visits it for the first time, you consider. So what happens when she visits for the first time is when that particular initial HTTP request arrives at a site, so unique ID is being given and backend is also being maintained. So let us understand this using a diagram. So consider you have a client and client will always have a cookie file, maybe empty or written something on it. So this Susan has already visited eBay site, so she has an entry in the cookie file on the client side. So there is a server who is an Amazon server. He'll be always having a backend database. Obviously it is a server, so it is not a big deal for him to have a database. Now Susan, as her first request, sends server a request regarding certain what do you say, certain kind of an object or a product. So she sends a usual HTTP request message to the Amazon server. Now what Amazon server will do, Amazon server creates an ID for her or for this particular client machine. It creates an ID. In this case, it has created 1678 for that particular user, for this fellow. Okay, so for this user, then after creating that, he will make an entry into his own database, the backend database. He has to make an entry. If he doesn't make an entry, then it's of no use. Correct? Next, what he will be doing? Next, he will send this particular number to the client. How is he sending? He is sending a response message. So here you will be having status line, status code, that is your version status code, its status phrase, all those things, and below you have header lines, right? So in that header line, one header line will be set cookie and this particular number will be assigned to that, and this particular header is sent to the client. Now what client will do? Client will take this particular set cookie number in the file, that is in your cookie file. It will make an entry for Amazon and it will keep this number in front of Amazon. Okay, it will keep it in front of Amazon. So whenever this client is using Amazon, this particular number, that is a cookie number, will be sent to that particular folder. I mean that particular server. So how does this occur? Now after some time, if this Susan asks or sends a request, HTTP request to the server, then what she is doing in that request, it is making an header entry called as cookie. So what is that header entry's value? The value is the same number that was being stored over here. Correct? So this particular value is being sent to the server. Server accesses its database, and after accessing its database, it is going to respond back and the message or the process has to continue. Okay, even after a week later, if it is using, all the procedures are completely same. That is, the cookie is being used with the same number, the request is being sent, the database is being accessed, and response is being taken. So this is how your cookies are going to work. Now what all can a cookie bring? Cookie can bring an authorization onto the server. Okay, you are giving a direct authorization. The server knows what you're doing. It can give a shopping cart. Your cart will never forget what you have purchased. It can perform recommendations, the things that you get at the last of your Amazon. So if you are trying to purchase a phone on Amazon, so it will also show you saying that these many kinds of searches were being done. These were also the people that you have visited this page, the people have also visited that page. That kind of recommendations are being given. So it's given because of cookie. And as well as user session state can be mentioned. So what a user is doing, whether it is legal, illegal, all those things can be maintained. Correct? So how should you keep the state of a cookie? So it is the state where you are in, that is being maintained by your own protocol endpoint. That is, it can maintain a state at sender, receiver, or receiver over multiple transactions. So you can have it, or you can carry this by using HTTP message. So where you are, at what point you are accessing, that thing is actually given by your cookie number. So what the point is, whenever a client returns to the Amazon server after a week using that particular number, cookie number from the client, that particular server can understand how this or what this particular client was searching for. The number can have the complete database. Okay, so keeping some things aside, cookie is going to affect your privacy. That is, cookie permits sites to learn a lot about you. So what you're searching, so it can hawk you, it can send, it will try and send certain emails for you saying that you can buy this product, that product, or anything else. It can be used somewhere else, so it is going to hamper your privacy. You may supply name and email to lots of sites, so once your cookie is being contained, your Amazon people will be having your email and your numbers and your names, so it can be sold to very many people. So this is what is a case that had happened on your Facebook, right? So same thing can happen to your Amazon sites as well. So they have certain agreements of not giving, but it is hamperous. It may happen. It's not like it will happen, it may happen. So these are how the cookies are being maintained in certain machines and used as well as utilized for something good. So next that we have is about web caches. So now the cookies and web caches have no link. Okay, so they are just different aspects of web that we are trying to use. So we have brought in different aspects together and we are trying to learn. That's all. Okay, so the original goal of having a web cache is to satisfy the client request without involving into the original server. Now, why do we do this? What is the meaning of not involving into an original server? Now, consider that I have requested a Google server which is placed in some XYZ city of, or you can say like it is placed in New York City. When I request something for the Google server, it is all along moving my request right from my place, that is our Halyal, to the destination that is called as your New York City. So every time I request, my request has to move from my place to New York City, which is quite time consuming. So as an alternative, what we can do is we can place a web server in between, somewhere inside, maybe in Haryal, or maybe in our own district, or maybe in our own in Bangalore, so which is comparatively near for us, and try to request or get the files from the same place, correct? So that is what is called as proxy. Now you can see in the diagram you have a client wants to request something to the server, and we have placed in the proxy in between. So if this client is asking for some request, so what will server do? Server is going to request the original, that is a proxy server will request the original server, take that particular object and send it. Now when this object was being requested, the copy of the object is present in the proxy server. So the second client, if it requests the same object, so what can it do? When it requests the same object, it can send the response here itself instead of going to the original server, requesting it back and then sending it. So what is this? This is come somewhere like it prevents my time consumption. My response time is being decreased. I need not go and ask the server which is present in New York City or London or somewhere else. I can have a nearer place where my contents are being stored. So user sets the web browser, web access is via your cache. Usually user's browser is going to request via your cache. Cache is nothing but a proxy server. Then one more name for web cache is proxy server, nothing else. So browser sends all the HTTP requests to the cache object in the cache returns the cached object, else it requests the original server, then returns it to the client. So what it is, consider you have a proxy server in between. What did it do for the first client? Now when first client had requested this particular object, proxy server did not have it. So what it did, it forwarded the request to the original server, got that particular response, and that response it is using for the next clients. So what it is doing, the proxy server, if it has that particular object, it will send it. If it does not have that object, it will go to the original server, request on your behalf, take that particular response, keep a store of it in the rest of that particular response, and forward it to you. So let us understand why this caching is so important. Okay, so why this caching is so important? It is because of your response time, the time that it takes. Now the very question that you have is, where is this web cache being installed? Usually your web cache is typically installed by your ISPs. If you are in university, company, or residential ISP, anywhere, maybe your college or VTU is possible. If not, Harial Place ISP also can keep this. Okay. So why should I go for web caching? First thing is that it is going to reduce my response time for client. So it need not, I need, if to serve my request need not reach where it need not reach Washington DC or London. It can just go to Bangalore and get it satisfied. Correct? So this is the first positive point that web caching is giving you. Second is that it reduces traffic on an institution's access link. So it is going to reduce your traffic, obviously. Next is, if you have an internet dense with the caches, it enables the poor content providers to effectively deliver the content also. So it can have an effective deliver if you are a user of ISP provider which is hardly of somewhere 1 Mbps user, so, and you have somewhere around 5 to 6 machines running as a client, so that thing is being, it will not be a burden on bandwidth. It will not be a burden on client or a bandwidth. Now when you consider this, let us learn this with a example. So we have a caching example, that is, there is an institutional network. So interior LAN you have, there are so many machines connected to one router, and this is going to create a LAN. Obviously the speed of LAN is usually more. Consider that I have an 100 Mbps LAN, which is very common in any of the institution which is having 100 Mbps LAN. Having this 100 Mbps LAN is very common. You have one more public network that is having original servers. This is also having a router. One router is going to connect to your institutional router, and the bandwidth between these two links is 15 Mbps. Okay, so usually this particular thing is costly, so they keep it small. So I have a 15 Mbps access link. Now I have 100 Mbps over here, but I have 15 Mbps over here. Now let us have certain assumptions. First assumption is that I have an object to access from the original server, which is of size 1 MB, approximately 1 MB for every request. So if this particular machine is sending a request to that particular object, this machine has to get 1 MB of data. Similarly, if this requests, I have to have 1 MB of data. If this requests, again I have 1 MB of data. If the fourth machine is requesting, even then I should have 1 MB of data. So for every request, there is an object that is moving from the original server to the client, which is of size 1 MB. Okay. Next, there is an average request rate from the institution's browser to the original server. For this original server, you have a browser which is going to send a request at certain rate. That is, every second the browsers are going to send 15 requests. Okay, any of the machine, it might be any of the machine, it is going to send all together from these 4 machines. All together you have 15 requests been sending per second. So if I'm sending 15 requests per second, it means that I should be capable of sending 15 MB of data every second. So this particular link is utilized completely, correct? So one request is of 1 MB size. If I'm sending 15 requests, then it will be 15 MB by size. 15 MB by size for how much time? For 1 second, correct? So 15 Mbps is utilized to its complete extent, correct? So next assumption that we have is, we have a delay from institutional router. From this router, we have a delay to the original servers for about some 2 seconds comparatively. Okay, this is an assumption. Usually any router would be having certain amount of delay. This is for fixed. So you have certain amount of 2 seconds of delay. Now if I calculate the efficiency of this particular network or time taken by this particular network, if we see the consequence, what is there? The first consequence says that my LAN's network, how much it is being utilized? Only 15 requests. Every request is of 1 MB. So approximately 15 MB I'm utilizing. Out of 100 MB, I'm utilizing only 15 MB. So I can say that only 15% of my link is utilized, which will be 0.15, what I consider out of 1. But rather, if I consider access link, I have 15 requests, each request of 1 MB. So 15 MB per second, complete 15 MB per second. I'm utilizing 100% of this particular link. It is good thing because it is utilizing 100%. It is good thing, but not good for every part or always. So I'm utilizing 100%, which I can say. So every request can take somewhere around 1 minute to reach, correct? So what will be my total delay? Whatever delay I have on internet, that was 2 seconds that we calculated or that was being given. What was your access? Access is 1. What is your LAN? LAN is again 0.15. So if I calculate all those things, I will approximately get, like, for one particular request to serve, I need 1.35 minutes to serve it. So this is quite a bad thing, correct? So what to do as an alternative? As an alternative, I can make one change. First change is that I'll make this as 10 Mbps and I'll make this as 100 Mbps. Okay. So what are the consequences or possible solution that you can have? You increase the bandwidth, say to 10 Mbps. Okay. Next, 100 Mbps. What consequences you are going to face? This is also 100 Mbps and this is also 100 Mbps. Okay, what consequences you will face? Utilization of your LAN is 15% again. Utilization of your access link is also 15%. Good thing. Total delay, if you calculate, you have only 0.5 seconds. It's good thing. That is, within half a second you are going to serve everything. It's good. But what is the problem? It's often costly because I have made this link as 100 Mbps access link, which is quite heavy for me. So what is the solution for this? Place a web cache. So place a web cache. What is this web cache? How this web cache has been done? What happens with a web cache? So if you install a web cache, suppose I have a hit rate of 0.4. That is, every 25 seconds I have, or every 1/4 a second, I have a hit for this particular site or for this particular cache. So that time, if that is there, then what is the consequence? It is happening 40% of the load present on this particular access link. I can even reduce it. See here, 1.5 Mbps. So the 40% of this particular part is reduced, first thing. Second thing is that 60% is served by original server, only 60% is being sent on this part. When you consider utilization of access link to 60%, resulting a negligible delays of 10 milliseconds. So approximately 10 milliseconds is been, you have a negligible delay, no problem. So total delay is approximately less than 1.4 seconds. By saying that you have an internet delay over here, you have certain access delay and LAN delays. If you just mix them, it is more than enough. So by placing a web cache, I can utilize this particular network present over here and give a less load onto my access link and serve it in the nearest possible way, which will save my time from 1 minute to 1.4 seconds, which is a drastic change and is quite helpful. But if server, or that is your proxy server, is not having the content, it has to go to the original server and accept the content and then move forward. And caching is only possible if all the machines are going to access the same object, not different objects. Okay. Now caching has one problem, that is, if this particular data over here, original server, has sent data to the proxy server. Now proxy server is having the data. After 15 days, you come in and ask for the same data. Original server has changed it, but proxy server will be having the older one. Then what? So for that reason, we have something called as conditional get. Okay, original server has sent a file to the proxy server. Consider this situation of today. Okay, I have requested a server for some XYZ file. Proxy server will be the first one who will take my hit of asking for the object. Proxy server does not have that object, it will ask the original server. When it asks the original server will send the object. That object will be forwarded to me and I will be using that. Now when that object is forwarded by the proxy server to me, proxy server will also keep the original copy, correct? Now after keeping the original copy and serving me, after 1 week, consider that someone comes and edits that particular file in the original server. Okay, from XYZ file, it has happened to be that it is STUV. It is the same name. It is having same name XYZ. Some extra STUV is being added to that. Okay, now I want this changed to one. I'm interested in having this changed one. This machine is interested in having this changed one. Now what this machine will do, this machine is going to first request institutional cache. So when it requests institutional cache, if it just returns that particular object without cross-checking whether it was modified or not, that happens to become a blunder mistake, because I will be receiving the old file and not the new file. So what institutional cache will do after some time, if I have a request after a week and all, what institutional cache will do, cache will go to the original server and cross verify whether the information, that is that file, is altered or it is not altered. If it is not altered, it absolutely has no problem. But if it is altered, then it has to fetch that file and then it has to send it to the client. Now, how should it understand that the file contents are being altered or not? So that is done by conditional get. Conditional get has a statement in the HTTP request, and that particular header line is if modified since. In front of that, after colon, you have a date. Okay, so what it is going to do, this is what is called as conditional get. In your request message, so you being a client send a request to the proxy server will send a request to the original server. So what that proxy server will put in, it will put in an extra header file that is called as if modified since with that particular date. So if this, or when this particular request reaches the server and if it has not modified, I mean any data is not modified, then it will send that HTTP 1.0 in the status line in your HTTP response message. In the status line, it will send that HTTP 1.0 is being used and status code is 304. That is, it is not modified. So let us see it with a diagram. You have a cache. You have requested something for the cache. That's why we are considering cache and not client. You have a cache. You have the server. Now cache server is being requested with one kind of a request, one certain file. Now what cache will do? Cache will send an HTTP request message to the original server, which will be having a header name or header line called as if modified since with a date. Consider that the object is not modified. If it is not modified, server will respond you back with the HTTP response saying that the status line is HTTP /1.0. It is 304. What is the meaning of 304? It is not modified. So it is not modified. You can go ahead with that. If this is not the condition, if it is modified, so HTTP request is sent saying that if modified since with that date, consider that the file is modified or that object is modified. Then what server has to do? Server has to have a HTTP 1.0 200 OK in your status code and send that particular new file. So this file cache is going to forward this particular file to the client further. So this is how your HTTP is going to work. Okay. So to summarize what we learned in today's class, we have learned about cookies, how a cookie is. Cookie is a thing which is being, or a file that is being stored onto the server as well as onto the client. Client is going to access this particular, server is going to access this particular number to keep the state information. We have also seen web caching. We need not go to the original server and request everything every now and then. Instead, I can use a web cache which can save all the contents that a server has and serve the client as soon as possible. If the web proxy server or a web cache is having an older data, it will make use of conditional get and it will check whether the original server has changed the data and serve it or not. So this is how a web is served, and web is served using HTTP. HTTP has non-persistent as well as persistent connections. Whatever messages are exchanged, it is using HTTP message. And whenever you are using HTTP message, you can make certain alterations for cookies, for web caching as well as for conditional get. Okay, thank you. We'll stop here, and in the next class we'll study about FTPs. Thank you.